Welcome to Off the Console, the hottest new podcast where we talk about video games and all sorts of cool nerd stuff. And today, we have one of the coolest nerds in our podcast, Retro Game Core. How are you doing?
I'm good. It's good to be on here. You know, I haven't been on somebody else's podcast in so long, so I'm a little nervous. I'm like, oh, where's Bill? You know, like, I love it. This is great. So thanks for having me on.
Bill's a pretty cool guy, man. I don't speak with him all that much these days, but he's been very cordial and, professional, to say the least.
Yeah, totally.
Bill's a neat guy. I like him.
Yeah, and so how have you guys been doing?
Doing all right, man.
Doing good. Been a really busy week.
Yeah.
Yeah, crazy week, huh?
Yeah.
Traveling, playing the Steam Deck a bunch. That's what I've been doing this week. I had to fly out for work, and so but at least I had a lot of time to play games.
Nice.
Yeah, that's cool. I need more time to play video games, man. Editing videos, that gets in, like, you'd be surprised, man. A lot of people like go into the idea of content creation, thinking that, they can just spend all their days playing video games. But the truth is, it kind of eats more of your video gaming time than like just working a daytime job,
Yeah.
Totally.
I got in. I started my YouTube channel because I was like, man, I feel like if I play video games, I'm just wasting my time. But if I make videos about playing games, I'm gonna like be able to play games way more often. No, it's like I have to squeeze in game time while I'm recording B-roll, and that's the only time I get to play video games. That's how the life of a content creator.
Yeah. So what have you guys been playing?
Oh man, I've been playing Minecraft and a bunch of other stuff on the Retroid Pocket 5. Pretty neat. I like this device quite a bit. I'm gonna have a video coming out about it soon. And Russ just did a video about it, and you got another one coming, right?
Yeah, so that's basically all I've been working on too, is that Retroid Pocket 5. And yeah, the thing is great. It's not it doesn't feel like a toy anymore like the old ones used to. It used to feel like an old 90s console kind of thing. This one's more sleek and just streamlined, but yeah, it's great. Like the AMOLED display and everything. And even then, it's not that I'm playing games on it. I'm testing, which is different. It's like, oh yeah, running benchmarks or just seeing if I can break games, is all I'm really doing. And so I can't wait to finish the video so that way I can just treat it like an actual handheld device that I can play on. It's going to be great.
Yeah, I understand. Do the sticks click in?
Yeah.
They do. Yeah.
Yeah, because I have a Trim My Smart Pro, and one thing I guess I probably should have watched your video more, Russ. But what I didn't realize is that the sticks don't click in, and like I kind of want to do Moonlight testing, but like a lot of games use L3 and R3, and yeah, so no Moonlight for me, I guess.
Yeah, those have like PS Vita sticks, like knockoff PS Vita sticks on them, so they're not great, but it's neat for that price point. The Trim My Smart Pro even has fairly decent sticks on them, because usually they have like the Switch ones, which are just terrible. I hate those. So
yeah, I will send over that. They also do these companies usually send like SD cards full of ROMs and PC ports?
On the cheaper end, they do. Like the ones that are just trying to like send out like shovelware kind of stuff. Yeah, they'll do it, and it's always poorly organized and everything. But the high-end stuff, like a Retroid or the Android-based ones, they generally will not. It's basically just like a phone with controls slapped onto it.
Yeah, that's good to know. Yeah, I was a little concerned because, I got one of those micro SD cards, and I checked out. I will admit, I checked out some of the games on there.
Sure.
Nintendo might sue me or some shit because of the new lawsuit bullshit. But yeah. So on that topic, there's been an update to the Palworld lawsuit. So we now know what the 3 patents are. So the first patent, of course, they're all Japanese patents, by the way. The first one is quote unquote focused on the act of throwing objects at a character in a field, like some sort of interactivity. And the second one has to do with aiming in that same field, and the third one has to do with like riding on like mounted characters, like large Pokemon and all that. Now, these small summaries aren't doing justice to these patents. Not that I would want to or anything, but like you'd have to read further into these patents to really understand what it's all about. And they're really long.
I have a question about this, because the game Palworld was released in January, right? And
Yeah, it was early this year. Yeah.
Yes.
all of the patents here were filed after Palworld was released. So like, what? Like, how can they be infringing on patents that were created after the game was released? I don't understand that.
So from what I understand, these are just renewed patents, like sub patents of patents that were made in 2001. I mean, not 2001, not 2021, which is still kind of bogus because there's probably instances of prior art, like lots of instances of this. I mean, the gaming industry is pretty mature at this point.
So yeah, there's, like you said, lapsing. So patents have to be renewed every once in a while, depending on what type. And there's a lot of different types of patents. I'd assume Japanese patent system is fairly similar to the American one. And so yeah, they will lapse over time. So that, I was wondering the same thing, Gardner, on that a little bit. But I'm curious, like, how much harder it is to fight a Japanese patent over like an American one. Because I know that like companies over in Japan usually clean house typically. Like, heck, and I referenced this before, a modder over there modded a game that was a Japanese modder modded a Japanese game, and he got jail time for it. And so it's crazy.
Yeah. That's unreal.
So yeah, I'm curious. Yeah, go for it.
I was just gonna say, like, the claim is that they want 5 million yen per, like, for the Pokemon Company and for Nintendo, so like 10 million yen each, which is like $68,000 total. Which, you know, for Nintendo, that almost seems reasonable for a lawsuit, you know, like, especially with patent infringement from a company like Pocket Pair that made a boatload of money.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it really comes down to the injunction that's kind of tied to that, you know, like that they are not, you know, it's just a tiny little fee, and then also don't make that game, you know, like that. That's the big one there. So
stop selling it.
Yeah, exactly. And so yeah, it's crazy, and it's, you know, I can think of so many games where these are mechanics that I've seen in those games, you know, like aiming at throwing something to catch something, you know, like it's crazy. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If they have enough resources, I have a feeling, well, it's in Japan. So once again, I think that's kind of a hard one, but they're both in Japan. So that might help, right? Both companies are. But, and so I know in America, this would be an easier one to fight. In Japan, I don't know, because in America, as long as you can provide an example of it being used at least once before the patent, it starts to weaken the case for the patent. So, and yeah, so patents are very, very weird like that. I just, we bring this up so much now. Like, I feel like we need a Japanese lawyer to come on now.
So what I do know is that prior art in Japanese patent law, it doesn't just include like Japanese products or whatever. It also includes prior art worldwide. So it might be a bit of an easier case to fight than we expect. But again, it's still going to be a hard case because they're going against Nintendo naturally. Like, I wouldn't want to go against Nintendo.
Yeah, I don't.
No.
Well, Nintendo, like, Japan also really likes their prestige and their like culture and stuff like that. Nintendo's a core part of it. So that's why I would kind of say that, like, being in Japan, and Nintendo probably has like such a big pull on everything. I wouldn't want to take on Nintendo.
No.
Yeah. Speaking of taking on Nintendo, though, there was also another surprise lawsuit that actually isn't in our outlook. That's not in our notes because it just happened. It's a streamer who's getting hit with the book because essentially they've been streaming leaked Nintendo games being played via Nintendo Switch emulation. And, you know, obviously as content creators, we don't want to break embargoes because that's just bad. It breaks trust between us and the company, and there's a good chance that you'll never get anything again, right?
Yeah, it's just rude too. It's just like, why would you, like, I get why people want it. They always want to have the one up and get the views and all that, but at the end of the day, like, once that decorum kind of falls apart, then what's the reason of them to even ever give it to you? So there's got to be some rules.
And I think in this case, though, there was no embargo because it was straight up a leaked copy.
So they just got a hold of a leaked one and then they played it emulated. They didn't even get like
Yes.
yeah. So I was
Yes, and so what ended up happening is that well, essentially Nintendo is now claiming that they can just sue anyone that plays Switch games via emulation, period. In this lawsuit. That's one thing that they mentioned.
Yeah, I saw that.
Have they won any lawsuits before this from like that are that specific? Because if they have some precedents, but
I think they're going
I
to start
don't
with
think they
this
have.
one.
I
Yeah, the
think they've
thing
wanted
is-
to. I know they've threatened it, but yeah.
Yeah, with this one too. I mean, I read some of the wording, and it was like even providing a link to an emulator is making you liable for any sort of legal action from them as well. So, like for example, on my website, if I've got a guide about, hey, you want to set up your Retroid Pocket 5, here are all the emulators that you'll want to download. If I would link to Yuzu, then they would, and not even just Yuzu, like Sudachi and Suyu, like all the forks and stuff, they're like that's wrong. And so I'm like, come on, just a link, and yeah, it's really, really interesting here that they're kind of going against it. And to be fair, that streamer was really pushing it. I've become somewhat familiar with Nintendo and their legal processes over the past couple months, but like the streamer was like showing it off, and then the channel would get taken down. They'd start a new stream, and then they would show it again, and they were like kind of egging Nintendo on, and so I can see why that kind of crossed a line in their minds. So
How big is the streamer? I don't think I caught that. I read some of the stuff. I just didn't really look into the streamer themselves.
I'm not sure. I think it's pretty small.
Yeah,
Pretty small.
I think there's a lot smaller than like all of us. So
there's like, I don't even. They wouldn't even get money from them because they'd have to just file. They file paper.
I think I read at one point they had like 2 people watching their stream. Like it's not. It was not a financial impact to Nintendo.
That's
it was a principal
crazy.
thing.
Yeah, that one's going to be harder to lose. But I agree. Like, first off, playing stolen software is illegal. Just everything about that is just they were asking for. I don't get it.
Yeah.
Like-
I mean, I would like to see a company roll out their own marketing plan. Like that's what the whole embargo thing for me is. Like, I want to see what they're going to come up with to promote the game, and anything that we do to like undercut that is just kind of, I don't know. It sucks. It sucks for that marketing team. Those people are getting hired and paid to promote their product, and other people are going to undercut it so they can get their own views. And that's just kind of a crappy way to be a human, I think.
Yeah, and it really
I
damages the development team's morale too. Like,
Yeah.
to put all that work into the marketing and to polishing the game and making it, and then having it just leaked out in public when it's not ready, probably, like that can really, really hurt.
Yeah, I mean, it's just something you shouldn't do, period. Like, if you guys are, like, any viewers, if you're aspiring to be a streamer or a content creator, the first thing you should do is respect the embargo dates. And second, if anything, like, leaks knowingly, you probably shouldn't cover that either. Especially if it's a Nintendo
Cover
game.
the news. Cover the news on it.
Yeah,
Don't
cover
actually
news.
play the game or anything like that. You're just not going to have a fun time. It's never worth it. It might sound like, especially if you're younger, sound cool or whatnot, but one person, one company you don't mess with is Nintendo.
Yeah, and also, like, if I also wouldn't post any videos of that, like, because, like, remember when GTA 6 leaked? Like, the trailer for it leaked? Like, it leaked, what was it, like, I think it was like a couple of hours before they decided to just release it anyways. People were getting taken down left and right because they were just reposting the trailer. Like, that's a bit of a different story, but at the same time, though, it's still something that Rockstar does. Like, oh yeah, when I've edited for Fan the Decks videos, there were times where I would include gameplay, like trailers for like Red Dead Redemption, and guess what? Those videos would get taken down because copyright issues with Rockstar. It's kind of ridiculous, honestly.
Is it Rockstar, or do they have like a company that? Because I know that there's some trailers, some things that have a holding group or someone that like manages it for these companies, and they'll just auto take it down. They have like software almost that just auto takes it down.
I would have to ask Rich from Fan to Deck about that.
Interesting.
But
Because
we did end up having to replace it or like blur the footage. It's kind of nuts.
Crazy.
Whenever I get like content ID stuff, it's always from like a third party company that's handling it for the IP owner. So
that, or there are a couple Predator ones that will claim it and they make bank, but they do get in trouble later. But I've had this happen a lot. I've streamed a lot. I've done a lot of trailers, whatever it is, and I almost never, especially, well, trailers can have music too, so that's where you definitely got to be careful. But I will say one thing though with these companies, a trailer should be used to promote your product as much as possible. You really should be like wanting as many content creators to use your trailer. I do wish that they, like, as a content creator, that they would allow it even more and even push for it and really push people to promote that type of stuff, because that's pure marketing and oftentimes free marketing for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's a fun fact related to this. Guile from Street Fighter, how his theme goes with everything.
Mm-hmm.
So, Japanese Street Fighter 2 Turbo, like, tournaments, Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo tournaments, if they get Guile staged, they just restart the game because they won't play on his stage because the VOD will get copyright striking because, like, everyone's made covers of that song and then, like, it'll get struck. It's kind of crazy that the song that goes with everything can't be played on YouTube at all, right?
Yeah.
No, you could fight it. And I bet you'd win it, but that's the thing. You have to do it. Because if they copyright strike, you can still fight it. I've done that a few times, and they just like, oh yeah, and just let it through. But
yeah, I had a problem once where I did a speaker review. I was reviewing retro speakers that had shielding on them, so you could play them next to a CRT television without getting buzzing. And so I was like showing that off, and I was playing Sonic on the Sega Genesis to kind of as my demonstration music. And I got hit with a copyright thing for that, but it wasn't even from like Sega. It was because some Spanish acoustic guitar duo had done a cover of that song and had it registered under Spotify or Apple Music or whatever. And so it got tagged as being a cover of their song. And I was like, wait, like Sega's not even involved in this stuff. And so I had to go and do a counter notification, and then I had to wait like 30 days or whatever. And then it got remonetized. But yeah, it's just kind of funny. Like, I'm like, wait, this isn't even your guys' song, And so it is.
That's
takes
crazy.
way too long.
The copyright thing is so wild on YouTube. I've built up like a stable of songs that I know won't get copyright claimed, and then I just use those. And it becomes like, if I want to add a new song, I have to like go and use like different tools to see who's actually, like, if there's what's the term for like on YouTube where it's like run by like a different company than YouTube, the advertising.
MLM or something.
Yes,
or no,
like
MS,
you can actually, there are some YouTube extensions that you can get that will tell you if they're owned by an MLM or not, and if they're owned by like a certain one, then you know that it's been copyright claimed. So that's what I have to do. I have to do a bunch of research, and it's just usually not worth it for me to add new music to my videos.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Yeah,
but getting back to the whole like breaking embargo thing, it's always, for me, I'm all about like the craft of the marketing team and what they're going to come up with, because sometimes it's really ingenious, and it reminds me of, so I'm retired Navy. I was in the Navy for like 23 years, and back in the day we would go on deployments and wherever, and so you'd be in like Malaysia and go down to Chinatown or whatever, and they're selling DVDs of the movies that are still in the theaters, and so people would just buy them up, because you could play them on the mess decks, like in the where you eat on the ship, and so people would throw those on, and it would be like, I don't know, Terminator 3. I remember that one coming out in like 2002 or whatever. And we're watching it, and it's just like the worst footage ever. Like, you can watch the people standing up and walking out of the theater, that kind of stuff. Like just those cam footages, And I'm like, I'm not even gonna watch this. Like, I'll just wait. Like, why? Like, the thrill of getting it a month early is just not worth it to me. You know what I mean? And that's what I feel about breaking embargo. Is the same thing. It's like, let's just wait and see how it goes.
Yeah, and embargo also gives content creators like a level playing field, right?
Right.
Which that's not something you usually get as a creator, right?
Yeah.
You have an idea and you're like, did someone else do this already? Yeah. So I don't know how am I going to do this different? But when everyone's obeying the embargo, you get the chance to like make the best content and have it be seen by most people,
Right.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's not good for content creators if too many people go off, but luckily not too many people go off script on that.
Yeah.
But like that bad movie footage and all that brings me back to like the good old days of LimeWire. Not that I promote piracy or anything like that. It's just what it reminds me of. I've seen least one.
But
video
back
like
then,
that.
it's like we had 480p TVs, you know, like we couldn't really tell. And we're like, oh yeah, that looks pretty good. Oh yeah, I can kind
Yeah.
of see the character, you know. Like,
Exactly.
that's
So
not the world we live in
Oh
anymore. You know?
man.
it is good old days. Yeah, no. So Russ, you've probably played games a lot on like older devices and older like smaller screens and all that, because like for me playing games on my 4K and then going and playing I have a PlayStation 1 with the portable screen, and I went back and I was playing some Silent Hill on it, and I was like, wow, this is more detailed than I remember at times, but also so blurry in other areas that it's hard to go back sometimes.
Yeah, especially like the quality of the LCDs back in the day just were not like what they are today, and we forget that, you know. And so I remember that PlayStation portable screen. I actually had one of those, and yeah, at the time it blew my mind, but nowadays it's so bad. I had one for my GameCube too, like, and I used to bring that on the ship actually, and like have a little GameCube that I could play, you know. And it is just terrible by today's standards, but it was cool back then.
It definitely was cool back then. Anything you can get, like anything to get stuff portable.
Right.
Like, I mean, I think when I was young, I traveled with my dad. I had my PlayStation hooked up to a CRT, like small portable CRT TV. Like it was big. It'd take up one seat, and then he'd go in and do his work, and I'd just sit in the car and just play. So like awesome. It's much better now with my phone.
Yeah.
Man. Did they ever make this for PS2? Because like that's kind of when I like started gaming, like the PS2 era. Because like I was like, I think I was in like kindergarten when like Halo came out. So I was really small.
Oh my
God. Halo, playing Halo as a kindergartner was something else. So,
that is a crazy.
That's hilarious. No, I don't remember a portable screen for either the Xbox or the PS2. I just remember the GameCube one.
I think third parties might have done it, but
right.
Yeah.
First party.
Speaking of which, I think one interesting thing I learned from your article with The Verge was your rank that you ended up retiring as. You're a real life Master Chief.
Yeah, I was a Master Chief. I actually held that rank longer than any other rank I was in. It's an E9, so it's like the highest enlisted rank, and I hit it really early in my career. I was a linguist, and the thing about linguists in general is that they're multi-talented for the most part. Like it's just kind of a thing. Like, oh yeah, I speak these languages, and I also do all these other things. And so as a result, retention is really hard for linguists in the military because they've got other skills, and they're like, yep. I did my 4 years, and now I'm going to go off and do some other thing, you know, and so that doesn't typically happen with the other ratings or jobs within the military. And so as a result, advancement, if you do happen to stay in, like ranking up is pretty quick, you know, if you're in the right place at the right time. So I was very lucky, and I made all the way to E9 in the first 15 years, which generally average is like 22 years. And so got super lucky about that. And so, yeah, I ended up being a Master Chief for about 7 or 8 years of my service. And it's in the Navy, it's like, okay, yeah, he's a Master Chief or whatever. But like when you say that outside of the Navy, it is so strange for everybody else. Like, wait, you're a Master Chief? Like, yeah, that was my rank. I was a Master Chief. You know, no helmet, but yes, it was pretty cool. So
I think you need a helmet.
I think he needs a weapon.
Oh,
yeah.
The AR, or the BR.
So what languages were you a Master Chief of?
So I started as a Russian translator. So there's a school in Monterey, California. So they send you there. You have to take all these tests ahead of time to see whether or not you could learn a language, you know. So I went there for about 2 years, you know, and just basically learned Russian from scratch, and all day, every day, just learning that. And then after that, September 11th happened, and so they expanded the amount of languages, because at the time they were just focusing on like Cold War style languages, you know, stuff you can probably expect, you know. And so then they threw me in a class for Indonesian. Basically, they're like, well, it's the largest Muslim country in the world. We have no idea. Let's just, you know, let's build a troop of people who can speak it. And so I was like one of 5 people that spoke Indonesian. But the thing is, you know, in the military, and I think everywhere, you know, the higher you rank up, the less you actually do the work, the more you're leading others. And so by the time I was in like 10 years in, I was rarely working with language. I was just, you know, policy and things like that. And so, yeah, a lot of fun. But unfortunately, yeah, not enough time with the languages. I ranked up too fast, which is kind of a bummer.
Okay.
Well, I mean,
I know some Russian, so that kind of hits for me.
Nice. Awesome.
Yeah, I don't know any. Well, I know Vietnamese, but that's because I'm Vietnamese.
Awesome.
Fun fact. I think. Yeah.
I know a little bit of Klingon.
Nice.
I can. You just have to sound like you're like really guttural, right? Just
Yeah.
make it sound like Klingon.
Yeah. I'm not going to do it because it's embarrassing.
Come on, Gardner.
No.
You know, what's
Sorry.
funny is that when I first learned language, I thought that Russian was going to sound like Klingon. You know, I always heard like hard Russians or whatever. It is not. It's actually a very like soft language when spoken, you know, natively, you know, and something I just didn't understand and appreciate at the time. There's a lot of French influence in Russia, you know, from back in the times of Peter the Great and whatnot. And so a lot of the accent and mannerisms and stuff actually are more Indo-European on the Western side. And so that was something I did not understand at the time. I thought it was just going to be all these people, you know, talking hard about vodka or whatever. And it turns out, no, it's a very complex and deep language. It's pretty cool.
Different dialects will be a little bit more guttural. There's a couple of letters that are a little bit harder, but are harsher. But yeah, it's not what you'd expect. And it depends on who's speaking it. But yeah.
Right.
No, I lived in the Samara region. We don't need to get into this because we need to get back into the game topics, but I lived in the Samara region for 2 years, so.
Oh, awesome. That's cool.
That sounds pretty nice.
It was interesting.
I gotcha.
I have a lot of stories, but that's another time, another place, another time.
Yeah. So any further questions on any further statements on the Palworld lawsuit? Nintendo? No.
I'm curious. Okay, so I'm into the whole sites. I don't follow sports too much, but like, who's your bet right now? Who do you think's gonna win, and how much? Like, I think it's gonna get settled. Obviously, if it's that low too, like if it's gonna be a low enough lawsuit, there's some type of weird play here.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's hard to predict. I almost feel like this won't go all the way in court, you know, that they'll just settle out, you know, at some point. But what are the terms that Palworld are going to accept? You know, that's going to be the big thing, because that injunction part, I mean, that's the whole shebang, really. And so, yeah, it'll be really interesting. I'm not sure if I would go one way or another. I feel like it just won't come to the final lawsuit and judgment.
I think
they're good.
Sorry, go ahead.
Do you think it's going to end up being they're just going to be paying for licenses for the patent? That's what they ultimately want, so they can have a slice of the pie.
I feel like that could be part of their play here, but I mean, I don't think Palworld will settle with discontinuing the sale of their game. Like I don't think they'll settle with that. So
I mean, yeah, that'd be silly at this point.
Yeah,
I think there might, if there's a path for Palworld to continue to exist, that doesn't involve like changing the game drastically. Maybe they'll change the Pokeball. I mean, whatever they're called. What are they? Pokeballs? Palballs? Pokies?
I don't even know.
If they like, I don't know, change the shape to like a box, if that's okay, then I'm sure they'll do that. But like, if they have to change the core gameplay of catching the Pokemon and then using them,
I mean, the patents show throwing like this. They could always just toss it, maybe
like an underhanded toss.
I have a feeling there's a couple of ways, because those patents are so blatant that you could probably get around it pretty easily. That's the problem with design patents like this. They're the dumbest things in the world, but they can also be circumvented if you know what you're doing.
Well, hopefully there's a path for Palworld to survive, because I think Palworld's pretty fun. Like, I know it's kind of a meme game because it's Pokemon with guns and all, but it's actually pretty fun if you like give it a shot. Play with friends, definitely.
Oh, it's fun. It's definitely fun. Definitely not like it's a little bit rougher than you'd expect, but it is definitely fun. I don't think it's going anywhere. I think the final verdict is going to be an agreement outside, and I don't think they'd accept anything beyond a license or change. It's either going to change or it's going to be licensed. So and they're going to win there, and Pokemon and Nintendo are going to be able to have this as kind of case precedents for these patents in the future. So
yeah, absolutely.
which sucks.
So the next topic on hand is the PS5 Pro, and also Sony doubles down on the PSN account requirements for PC ports. So, quick question: how many of you guys have bought a PS5 Pro?
No.
No.
No,
I don't want one.
Yeah, I did not buy one either. I'm trying to buy. I'm trying to find a PS5 that has like jailbreakable firmware. That's the closest thing to a PS5 Pro I'll get, to be honest.
Okay.
Maybe we'll be able to overclock it and then like get some of that sweet performance. But that's probably a pipe dream.
So would that be hardware locked or software locked with the PS4 Pro? So with the PS5 Pro, like with the PS5 Pro, I'm assuming they have some type of lock to like indicate what the settings can be based on the hardware, what you're using. If you could unlock that and overclock your PS5, and that might not be a bad way to go about it to get a little bit more.
No, admittedly, I don't know much about whether or not you can actually overclock a PS5.
Well, you can
I'd be
overclock anything depending on the software.
Right. Well, easily, I mean.
Yeah.
But like, I'd be interested in finding that out for y'all. When I get it, if I can find what that is.
I have a PS4 that I jailbroke, and my trick was I bought it like when it first came out and waited. I just waited.
That's a good trick. That's a good trick.
To catch up.
Maybe I'll do that for the Switch 2.
No.
Are we calling it the Switch 2, or do you think it's going to be called the Switch 2? Because I don't think it's going to be called the Switch 2. I think it's going to be like
Super Switch.
That's what I was going to say.
That's yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think they've never used a 2, right, in any of their naming. So I feel like it'll be like I don't know, Switch U or
God,
Switch
I hope
64.
not.
Probably the Switch U. Usually companies, especially with hardware and project, like whether it be hardware or projects, they have code names. Usually while they're trying to vet what name they should use, or they don't want to worry about it. I have a feeling that's partially it. They might not have used Switch 2 just because they have a code name internally, and they're just going to call it the next Switch for now. So it'll be interesting.
Maybe it'll be called the Nintendo NX.
Have they ever called a system as like? Now that I think about it, they've never used to or
the Super Game Boy 2. It's the only one that's coming to mind for me.
Super Game Boy 2.
Yeah.
Unless you want to
remember that.
Well, unless you want to count
Boy,
the 2DS.
Oh yeah.
I don't count that.
Not really.
Because the whole point of that was to go from 3D to 2D.
That's a downgrade.
Yeah. No, it will be interesting to see what they call it.
Yeah, they definitely. I mean, I'm thinking about 3DSs. Like new 3DS XL. Like they just throw on all sorts of other things, but they won't say 2. It's kind of funny.
If they make a whole new architecture,
I wonder if it's just going to be the new Switch.
I mean, yeah. To be fair, no one's ever called. The only one that calls their consoles like a number is like Sony. Because I think about it, you have the Xbox 360, and the Xbox One. Terrible name, by the way. And then
they really painted themselves in the corner with that, because you remember like PS2 and Xbox came out at the same time, and so then they couldn't make an Xbox 2 because the PS3 was coming out, and so everyone's like, oh, well, 3 is better than 2, and so that's why they went with 360, because they're like, well, we can't use 2 because it's going to make us look worse than the PS3.
I understand the 360 one. That one I didn't fight people on too much. It's once I went to the Xbox One where I'm like, okay, this is just stupid. I get what they're trying to say, but it's not going to translate out. People that didn't really understand market research name that one.
Yeah, but would you really call it an Xbox 720? Do you think that name would have sat well?
No, they could have just done the Xbox.
They could have called it the next box.
Yeah, they could have done it even a 720. I think I would have preferred a 720 over Xbox One.
Yeah.
And they did it because it was condensing everything down into this one device. You can plug in everything, record and all that, which was actually cool. I liked it for that. And they got rid of it, right? Halfway through its lifespan, they got rid of that feature that called it that indicated or why they called it an Xbox One. So it was silly.
Yeah, and then they released a mid-generation refresh called the Xbox One X. Also quite bad too. And then
I really hate the new generation name.
And then we have the Series S and X.
Microsoft just can't name anything. Like Copilot everything. Come on, give me a break.
Yeah.
But I mean, I like at least there's some consistency with like PlayStation 4 and then the PlayStation Pro and then the PlayStation 5 and then the PlayStation 5 Pro. It's like there's a little bit of consistency with that, which I appreciate. But it's also a little bit boring, right?
Yeah, but it gets the point across though.
Yeah.
I think that's yeah, consumers, it really helps with consumers as well because, like, let's be real, consumers get confused all the time.
Yeah.
I look at this from marketing typically, and while it's boring and everything, they're not going to be confused. Once you confuse customers enough, they won't buy it, or they'll buy the wrong thing. I've been there multiple times. For me, breaking into another, like, even looking at like CPUs, sometimes I don't keep up to date with the new CPUs, and I'm like, I don't know which one I want.
Right.
If you would actually name it in a very traditional way, with maybe hinting at it through the name, like the power, performance, and everything ratios, cool. Do it that way. It doesn't make sense to me in any way how they do it now, and it just, yeah.
I mean, it's like the Kingdom Heart games. Like I could not like fathom those games for so many years. I'm like, I don't know which one's which. You're just gonna have to wait till you come up with a real number. You know, like I just could not. All those different revisited blah blah blahs, like it's just too much for me. And I think that's a great example.
That's a good one. You got to be simple. I mean, for me, I understand the consoles because there's not that many of them, so I'm like, it's not going to bother me too much. But it is very bad. Very bad.
Well, like when I was probably, I don't know, 12 or 13, the GameCube had just come out, and my cousin had an N64, and for his birthday, his stepmom bought him Luigi's Mansion because it was Nintendo. Like, why wouldn't it work? It's a Nintendo. And when I went over to the house, my cousin was like, hey, can you tell my mom that this is not going to work on my N64? And I had to, a 12-year-old had to explain it to like a 35-year-old woman. I was like, no, this is for GameCube. It's totally different.
You got to explain it like, you have like a gas engine and you bought a diesel and you can't put diesel in it. No, I don't know. You have to find some way to like explain it.
Right.
That's why parents should get into PC gaming because, like, it's easy. It's for PC, right? I mean, occasionally you have to replace a graphics card and then maybe eventually your entire system, but it's a PC at the end of the day, right? Like, that's easy to understand, all things considered. No? No?
No.
All right, maybe I'm just crazy.
If you're going with Alienware, if you're going with a gaming specific brand, it's not as bad. But yeah, like I've seen people buy their kids like really crappy laptops, and they're like, yeah, it's not going to play the game that they want to play that they asked for. Like, it's even hairier in the PC world. That's what makes like the Steam Deck and getting into device specific field is, I think, important, and also I think it's going to work more as they go through it because some people just want to play games. Steam's easy to sell. If they really did a good marketing campaign, they could easily sell Steam machines nowadays, I think, with the concept of, hey, are you tired of like a game you buy for your system not working a couple of generations later? It just works with us. I think they could sell that a lot easier.
And call it the Steam Deck 1.
Just to spit in Xbox's face. See, we did it, and people buy it.
They'll never make a Steam Deck 3, though. Just remember that. Speaking of PC gaming, though, what do you guys think about the PSN account requirements for all of Sony's games?
I think it's a load of horse crap because they say that it's to keep their players safe, but there are few gaming companies that have more leaks to their name than Sony. And so submitting your personal details to Sony is in no way keeping you safe. I'm sorry.
It's anti-safe.
Yeah.
You could honestly, they could probably, if they do that statement, depending on what the statement is, they probably have a lawsuit on their hand, at least a class action. That's funny. Not even kidding about that. They probably have a class action that's waiting to be filed. That's.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, as a user, it's like it's another login, but the principle of it really is kind of grating, and it's only because they want some numbers in some boardroom to be like, look at all the PSN accounts that we've got signups for, like, look this big success.
Data's money.
Yeah, it's not success.
Data's money. Yeah. So making sure they can get more data is more money technically. My laziness these days is because I have kids and everything else. I don't have time to do the small things. So for me, like personally, I don't give a crap about this as long as I can play it wherever I want. If I have to do an extra login, whatever. My problem is, if I download a game and don't play it until I'm in offline mode, I don't think you can play it until you log in. And like on the airplane, I downloaded a game I think that required PSN, and I couldn't play it. I could connect it maybe to the Wi-Fi. I just don't want to deal with that, and so that's annoying. I think Steam needs to honestly have better agreements with all these companies with the mini launchers that they have. It's better than what it was before. At least we're not having a Sony platform that we have to play our games through, right? Like that's the icing on this, I think, is that at least we can still do it in Steam, right?
Right.
I just wish they could come up with an agreement to make it so it's more streamlined, because it is very annoying. And especially, I don't know if PSN's done it, but some other companies, they'll change their launcher after the game's launched. And I think that's very troubling, in my opinion, to change any aspect of that type of thing where it requires, let's say, more data, more checks, whatever it is should be legal. Should be, we need to have some laws over some stuff for that, in my opinion.
I feel like Sony could get a lot of goodwill if they actually made the PSN account thing like enjoyable and good. Like, so for example, make cross-save compatibility with PS5 console games, you know? So like me as a person, like I love playing on console, but I also love the cloud saves within Steam, you know? And so I would love the idea of buying, say, for example, Spider-Man 2, playing it maybe halfway through on my PS5, and then when the PC version comes out and I buy it, I can then resume my game there. But instead, what I've done is just not bought Spider-Man 2, because I'm like, I'll just wait for the PC version, and that's another sale that they lost, basically. But it'd be cool to have that cross-save compatibility, especially if they're requiring us to sign into their PSN anyway. I mean, games like Destiny, I can jump in and out of my character no matter what platform I'm on. I want something like that. That would be amazing.
So
if they want, I agree with you, Russ. If they want to like not invite pushback, like they said, then they have to provide value to what they're proposing. And you know, that's a great example. And I can't think of another one, but I mean, just simple things like that. It would just make everything much better for them.
Yeah, it's a carrot instead of a stick.
Yeah.
So a couple of things. First and foremost, I think my old personal account, my personal email, was part of those initial Sony leaks from like back in the day, like back in the PS3 days. So I'm still a little pissed off at that. And second off,
Was that when you were in third grade?
Come on. Damn, dude.
That's funny.
Savage,
That's
dude.
good. That is savage.
Yeah, but yeah, anyways, another thing too is that when you sign in, because I haven't bought any of the new like PC ports lately, when you sign into a PlayStation like game on Steam, does it like link your Steam account and your PlayStation account? So like if I bought God of War Ragnarok today, and you know I registered my account and everything like that, and then I bought Spider-Man when it comes out, Spider-Man 2 when it comes out, will it force me to log in with my credentials again, or will it just automatically recognize that my account was linked to my PlayStation and then there?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Like, I honestly haven't been buying a lot of these newer required PSN login games, you know, so I'm not quite sure. But yeah, they definitely, they don't have cross save. I know that. And then I think there may be some achievement things that are trophies or whatever. There's something along those lines. I'm not really sure. Rich from Fan the Deck knows a lot more about this stuff. I usually wait for him to talk about it.
Yeah, same. So like another thing too is that a lot of these games with PlayStation overlay, they don't work on, like, the multiplayer functions don't work on Steam Deck. Like Ghost of Tsushima, there's a co-op mode. Because I think it's there's a co-op mode.
That's
for
the
that.
co-op mode. The game itself works on Steam.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
It works great. Like, I could give a crap about the co-op mode. I know, and I'm sure a lot of people are like, oh no, it's all got to work. They do need to preface it, but like it works great on the Steam Deck. And I do wish the co-op mode worked, but yeah.
I agree, but like it is concerning that Sony either won't or can't make their PlayStation overlay work on Steam Deck properly. Like, remember Concord? That required a PlayStation like login, and that also didn't work on Steam Deck because, well, PlayStation overlay didn't work. Not saying that Steam Deck compatibility would have saved Concord, but I'm just saying.
Mhm. I mean, it's sad too because like Sony was one of like the biggest like AAA proponents of the Steam Deck like when it first launched, and now they're kind of like, if it works, it works, but we're not gonna go out of our way, and it's like, it's sad.
I'm glad God of War Ragnarok works, but like, there's no telling when they'll start making PlayStation overlay like mandatory.
I'm wondering if it's two different departments too managing it, because most of the games work on Steam Deck that are PlayStation, that are Sony released, and so I'm wondering if it's just a department also, because once you get into these big companies, they have a lot of internal fights too, even in this stuff. I'm sure you just don't know if maybe a bunch of people are pissed on the development team. I don't know in this circumstance, but yeah, there's definitely something they can work on. Why not? Like, I definitely think the PC world is a little bit wild sometimes, and we could definitely benefit from some streamlined capabilities where Steam's like, hey, if you're going to add anything extra like this into it, here's the API for it. We're fine with you doing it, but it's got to be compatible with all the platforms that this is supposed to work on. I think there's definitely processes that they could work on.
Yeah, so all in all, PlayStation hasn't been doing the best, making the best decisions. I also still think the PS5 Pro is like grossly overpriced. I know it's meant for like the hardcore enthusiast, but honestly, you're like a stone's toss away from just buying a PC that's maybe not as powerful, but it'll last you longer, and you can play PS6 games when those come out too.
Here's my I'll say one thing on this. It sucks that it's what, $700, right? Which is ridiculous for a console. They tried doing $700 with what, the
PS3. They tried
PS3.
600 for that one. Yeah, and that was
it 600? Was it $599 or I thought it was $699?
It was 600.
And they got, but back then inflation's caused things. Inflation happens, so it's not unwarranted at 700. But what value are you adding? And who's this actually for, and who wants this right now? I think it's fine to have it. I think it's fine to release something like this. But if they didn't do the market research, and I think people get a little upset about this, where I'm like, you have a PS5, just relax. It's not going to be that much better. But like, it's going to be, who's going to buy it? I'm kind of curious. Like, at the end of the day, how their sales are going to be on this.
Yeah, I feel like they, they probably went ahead and they were like, okay, we're going to plan this out. We're going to make a pro version. Maybe 5% of people are going to upgrade to this one. And they did calculation-wise, okay, we're still going to make money off it. It's good enough. But they didn't maybe factor in as much the 95% of people who were like, this is outrageous. I'm not going to buy this. And all the bad will that's going to kind of generate that. Even if you don't, like, I got a PS5, I don't plan on updating it or whatever. But there's a part of me that's like, oh, well, I'm no longer getting the best that I can. And 95% of people are going to feel that way. We're like, oh, this is great, but there is something better out there, and I don't have it.
I mean, I don't feel that way because my PS5 still works with everything. As long as they don't do any exclusive stuff, I don't feel that way. So I feel differently. Like, if I want the best I have, I'll pay for it, and that's usually but I'm also a MacBook person. I Mac stuff. Like, I'm already paying the Macs for a lot of stuff. So maybe I'm a little elitist on this, but I wouldn't buy this. I don't feel like it's for me. My worry is, though, is this going to affect the next one? So my rage would be more like, I don't care about the PS5 Pro. You're overcharging for this. What's the PS6 going to look like? And is this going to be indicative of that price? Like, that's where I'd be like, if I was Sony, I'd be like, this is a good test market. Because if they try to release the PS6 as even around that, it's not going to succeed. So
You may as well just wait for a PS6 Pro.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, that'll be $1,000.
God,
I mean, with tariffs, they will be, but yeah, I mean, it's already going to be more. I mean, PS5, they better buy it now, the PS5 Pro, because the tariffs are going to cause things to go a lot higher.
I'm hearing some conspiracy theorists saying that physical games are going to go extinct because of tariffs. Thoughts on that?
Games?
Physical games, yes.
You can slap a tariff on whatever you want. So if it's software, they could slap a tariff on a country that is out of somewhere else, I believe. So, or hardware, but obviously.
I think what they're saying is that like the tariffs will make it so that these companies will be less incentivized to actually release physical games.
Right, but I believe you can. Why wouldn't it affect the digital one too?
Well, what I'm saying is they're going to go digital too, digital only.
I know, but you could. I believe you can slap a tariff.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can.
Product, so
it's just a conspiracy theory that people are peddling.
It's a yeah. I mean, it'd probably be an excuse for them to just get rid of it altogether. I'm sure they don't want it anymore.
Yeah, that's why they don't sell a PS5 Pro with a disc drive built in, despite being the top end model.
Right.
That's right. That's more infuriating. I think if you're trying to sell this is the best of the best. This is a Pro, and you can have an attachment that adds what the other one just does. I get it. There's a PS5 Slim or whatever, but that's a little bit messed up.
Yeah. So, on the topic of PS5 Pros, let's talk about Steam. There's been a new update for developers on Steam. I think this is more relevant to Gardner Bryant since he has a game on Steam and also is releasing a second game on Steam as well.
Yeah. This is pretty interesting. This is a way Valve has added a new API so that games can check what beta branch their players are on and can offer players an easy way in game to switch branches, which is pretty cool. So like if I had an update for my game Doodlings and I wanted to test it, I could add a little check in the game, say, hey, what version of the game are you playing right now? Oh, you're on the stable branch. I need people to test this beta branch so before it goes live. And you can offer it to them right there, which is pretty neat. I believe there's also some UI updates that make it a little simpler to switch outside of the game, but I haven't read all the way through this article, but it looks pretty cool. I think that this is great, and especially with this new game that I'm working on, Chess Mess. It's got it's only in beta right now, so when I want to go to roll out new beta updates to my the people I've sent the keys to, they'll be able to test those, and I'll be able to get more feedback, I think, with this update, which is pretty neat.
Okay, so what it just says selected beta alpha. I'm seeing the screenshots. Like, how easy is it for them? Do they still have to go into like the properties or like the settings or whatever and change it on the game, or is there like an easier way to change?
So if you see like above the screenshot, it says new APIs. So there's 4 new APIs that they're adding to Steam, to the Steam API client, the Steamworks API is what they call it. So programmatically, what I can do is like I can pop up a little modal box in my game that says, hey, do you want to try the beta? And if they click yes, then I can I can call the set active beta to the current like beta branch, like the latest beta branch, and the Steam in the background will download the new beta, and then you can restart the game.
Okay, cool.
Which is pretty cool, I think. And there'd also probably, I'm imagining there's lots of ways you could use this. Like you could implement this in your settings menu. So like when people go into your game, you can actually tell Steam to update to a beta branch or whatever, which I could see some use for as well.
Interesting. Okay.
Are you going to implement it in your game?
Probably for Chess Mess for sure. I might add it to Doodlings as well.
Yeah, it seems like a promising endeavor. I don't really know much about the politics behind maintaining different versions of a game, especially like alpha, beta versus like stable and whatnot. But it's good that developers have more options to.
This will be really good for anything that's like, let's say Overwatch or live action or anything that's like good. It needs they update and tweak multiplayer settings or whatever a lot. For the game I'm making, if I do implement like a co-op mode or something that requires like a little bit more finessing, finesse and managing of versions between clients and all, or clients of people that are playing together and all that, like I could see this being helpful, but I'd have to dive deeper into it. It's cool. Anytime they add new features to make it easier for developers to do this type of stuff, I am all for it.
Yeah. I like this because what this will let me do is get more feedback from my players before I push something stable. And like I broke something with Doodlings. I don't remember what it was, but like a bunch of people noticed and like left a bunch of negative feedback in the forums, like, "Hey, you broke this," and it was because I didn't have a easy way to like push it to stable and get people to try to, or push it to beta and get people to try it, so I could get the feedback.
Also,
so this is going to be cool.
I mean, when I've played games that are in betas, like, or different versions of all that, sometimes it's annoying because you forget that you're in that and you end up to switch it over. So, like, as a user or a player, I'd love to know what I'm in, because I'm more of a power gamer. I like going on the edge a little bit. But sometimes I don't, because I don't want to forget that I'm on the beta or what's going on with the beta. So
yeah, and you can add a check. I would imagine you can add a check to your game to be like, what's the current branch? Like, what's the current stable version? What's the current beta version? Because once you have a beta version and you take that and you release it as stable, now your stable version is ahead of your beta, which means that like anyone who's on this branch on the beta doesn't get notified that something just went live on the stable branch unless you as the developer go into the Steam community and say, "Hey guys, there's a new thing," which people will often miss. So if you're checking to make sure that your beta players move over to the correct version, you can actually like have programmatically, you can do that as a developer and just say, "Hey, you're on the old beta, click over here to go onto the stable branch." I think that's pretty neat.
Yeah, I think it's a promising endeavor. I think it's cool. I don't know too much about how, Gardner would do it. I think that's up to him, but hey, it sounds pretty cool. So
you're gonna have to give us an example, Gardner. Like, when you get it done, I want to see how you do it. I'm curious.
Yeah, you should record. You should record footage of that.
Yeah, I will definitely.
So Amplitude Studios is going independent, separating from SEGA. And for those who don't know, Amplitude Studios are the guys behind like the Endless Dungeon series and some of the other games too. I'm not super familiar with the games outside of the Endless series. What are your thoughts on this?
They're a French developer, right? They used to be part of Ubisoft, and I think they moved on and made their own studio. I think it's cool. I was just reading up on it, and it sounds like they are going to have like a transition period. So their like upcoming game will still be under the Sega umbrella, but at some point they'll just be on their own. So it's cool. I mean, they've been around for like 10 years at least, and so it's enough time to really get their feet under them. And now I think they're just ready to do their own thing. That's cool. I've never actually played any of these Endless games. I'm not a big on like tactical games myself, but
they're very time consuming typically, and so I same. But are they are they separating with the IP? Like, are they gonna have IP, or are they gonna have to create a whole new IP? It's kind of like with the Bungie thing separating from Microsoft, and so I'm kind of curious on that.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't see anything about them moving away at all. Just that they'll still be under Sega during the transition period.
During the transition.
Yeah, I don't see anything in regards to whether the IPs will stay with them or if they'll go to Sega. But I would imagine that it
looks. Sorry to interrupt, but it looks like it says, with ownership of our studio returning to some of our original founders and members of the team, the creative vision of our games and the Endless universe rests in the hands of who know them best. So it looks like they're going to keep Endless and maybe even some of their other IPs.
Oh, that's good. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, it's good. I want to know what the agreement on that underneath. People don't usually see it. I bet you there's going to be payments to. There's no way they're exiting without like a huge payment to Sega. Megacorps don't separate like so easily like this. So we don't need to get the minutia and all this. It's just it's interesting when companies do this because it doesn't happen very often. And I'm all for independent, like for going more indie and all that.
Yeah, I'd like to see id do this.
Yeah, actually, I agree with that.
Yeah,
I'd like to see the Ubisoft studios do this too, because I know there's some pretty good like talent in there, but Ubisoft.
Nah, they're like a big octopus dragging a frickin' not an octopus, whatever it is, Kraken dragging a ship down. They're all the crews going down with it. Like, I couldn't see Ubisoft doing that. What they might do is they might get bought up by another company, and then they'll get ripped apart, and IPs and studios could get sold off. But yeah, that's speculation.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think it would be kind of cool. Like Capcom used to have a bunch of studios. Like Clover Studios was an offshoot from Capcom. Yeah, and then eventually they got shuttered, and then they became Platinum Games, and then they started making. I mean, has Platinum been making any games recently? I don't think I've seen any of their games as of recently. Maybe I'm just crazy. Besides, like, I don't know, Bayonetta 3.
Yeah, I think that's been it. That's the last I heard from them.
Damn. But yeah, I mean, there's also like Inti Creates. Damn, there's a lot of like Capcom talent that just left Capcom to do other things too. Because then you also have Yoko Shimomura. I think she's a composer for Capcom. She was a composer for Capcom, but then she went over to Square Enix and started making like the music for Kingdom Hearts and Final Fantasy 15. I don't know. There's just, I think people have the opportunity to. They should leave, but it's a lot harder than one would expect, especially because like I see a lot of these people getting laid. I see a lot of like game industry vets getting laid off, and then a lot of people are just like, "Oh, just make your own indie studio." Like it's not that easy.
It requires capital. Usually, what happens, like from my understanding, is that enough people leave that have a clout that they can go to investors, because there are game investing companies, right? And so they'll go to those and get funding for it. But they have to have a good vision and everything, and maybe even have a game doc and everything ready. So it's not easy. And if you don't get if they're not a tight enough group of devs, it's really not an easy thing. And some people just aren't entrepreneurial. Like you can't expect everyone to just want to, when they get laid off, to go and do their own thing. Like not everyone can think that. There's a lot, like Gardner, right? Like there's a lot to starting your business, to managing all that stuff. And from a game side, like you're not going to get paid for a few years if it's successful. So
yeah, that's if it's successful. Yeah, it's a gamble. I mean, it really is.
It's a huge gamble, and it's unless you have the capital, it's impossible to do. Saving grace is that if you want to do something really indie and you have a good severance package, maybe.
Yeah. But sometimes having capital and access to some of the best IPs in the world doesn't help you. In the case of Multiversus, it's going to be another $100 million hit to Warner Bros. game business. And honestly, I've played Multiversus for a little bit. It's like incredibly slow. I'm not a fan.
I prefer Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard that one's good. I haven't played it yet, but I've heard it's one of the better ones out there.
It's okay. It's better than Multiversus, I can tell you that.
I'm just not into these types of games. But I can say from like do beta releases, do a lot of tweaking, listen to your customer base. It's the same old. It's 101 business kind of stuff, right? Like whether you're making a product, a game, whatever it is, you usually get user insight early on, and I feel like they kind of failed to do that. A lot of these games kind of did, or they took paths, or they took risks, and they didn't succeed. And that's fine, taking risks. The problem is they took risks because they wanted to try to make that $1 billion game or whatever, you know, and it wasn't because they wanted a successful game. They wanted the biggest thing. They wanted to be it had weird outcomes. It's bizarre what they're doing lately, but
yeah, I remember this one. It's free to play, but like really predatory, and it's like mechanics to try to get you to buy stuff, you know. And especially with this IP, like I feel like, you know, if you're gonna have Bugs Bunny and Tom and Jerry and stuff, like that's going to court a younger audience, and I don't know. I would rather it had just been at least a cheaper entry game, you know, and then maybe have some add-ons and stuff like that. But just this kind of mechanic is really off-putting to me.
Yeah,
I think it's an interesting dichotomy having, you know, Bugs Bunny, Tom and Jerry be in the same game as like someone from Game of Thrones. I think it was Arya Stark. Am I correct?
I don't know. That's funny.
It is funny though, but and they also had Agent Smith from The Matrix as well. It's an interesting dichotomy, but also it's just, I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is that just the gameplay I feel like is like I said, really slow. But I feel like some people would like that. But even then, it didn't really sell all that well. Well, I guess it's free to play, so it didn't really sell. Period. But there's also the part where if you guys remember, Multiversus actually came out like a couple of years ago, and then they took it down after like a year of being released to then only re-release it later, you know, quote unquote upgrade or whatever. But like, what really changed even?
I don't know. I haven't played it since it re-released.
Yeah, I think they should have just started out small, continually worked on it, let people enjoy it, find a platform or someone that would enjoy it. And I just don't know if there was a place for this in today's world.
I mean, right now their 24-hour peak concurrent players is like 680 players.
That's not good.
Which is really bad for a game of that scale.
Yeah.
Especially for a free-to-play game, you know?
Yeah.
So Russ, how like predatory was it? Like that's another problem. Like free to play, I'm fine with, and I'm fine with like being able to spend money. But like if it gets really in the way of things, that's just.
Yeah, let me. I actually saw a quote. Here it is. So it says, "Joy is propped up by a dumpster fire full of free-to-play service gaming tropes. Some so poorly thought out or predatory that it's shocking they made it out of the gate at all." This is from Kotaku, and they said their conclusion was some forces behind these kinds of games are always ready to push the boundaries of monetization. It feels wrong ethically to participate and especially to recommend this game to others. So that was kind of what I had been reading, and I was like, wow, that's pretty intense, you know.
Mic drop, dude.
The thing is, with these games, you know, I have no insights into any of this, but it almost feels like it's like someone's sitting there and going, we got all this IP. How do we make money off it? What kind of game can we make? And that's like the opposite of like Gardner. Like that's not, you didn't think, okay, how can I make as much money as possible? Let me try to make a game. You know what I mean? Like that's a different mindset as opposed to I want to create something that is fun and amazing and everyone's going to enjoy it. And hopefully I'll make some money off of it too. Like that's a totally opposite idea. And so I think we as gamers are pretty smart, especially over the years of seeing this stuff. We're smart enough to see the difference between the two and be like, looks like a cash grab to me, you know? And so that's one of the reasons why I just never had any interest in it, because I'm like, I'm not gonna get duped into playing this game.
Yeah, well, it feels like what they're doing is like starting with the punchline of a joke and then working backwards, and it's like that's not how gaming works.
Or just researching anything. You can't have your conclusion before you start doing it. So I think it's fine to have both. So like to have like, I want to make some good money from this and also make a really good game. That's fine doing that. And companies could, and because companies are there, they have their stockholders, they are their stakeholders and everything. Just like diversify, I guess, and try to find what's interesting and try to get that, because, and we've talked about this multiple times, games are a creative medium. If you get away from the creative side of it, you're going to lose unless you're in another category, which is gambling style games, or you're really playing like if it's single player, you're playing off a different mindset and different drive than if it's something like Overwatch and maybe even something like Multiversus. But Multiversus is kind of a weird between this, right? It's got a little bit of the multiplayer. I don't. You can play against bots, I'm assuming, but like, it's got that concept to it. And so if it was like a FIFA game, they're always going to make money, even if they don't do anything creative. But yeah, this one, I think they tried to rely on the IP way too much and just didn't make anything good, right? And then tried to milk it. And we can see it. Like, there's been a lot of games, and I'm surprised we're in 2024 and this is still happening, where there's been so many games that you can sniff out like how bad they're trying to milk it and how bad the experience is, and people don't buy it. Like they can, like I said, they can only get away with a few type of franchises or certain like weird type of games out there with this. It doesn't fly with this type of stuff.
So I will say in the article, they also mentioned doubling down on 4 specific games. WB, I mean. Hogwarts Legacy, there's a sequel in the works. I didn't really like Hogwarts Legacy all that much. I know this is like sacrilege to some people, but
Don't tell my wife.
Oh.
She beat it 4 times.
What? No
Oh,
way.
yeah.
On
know
the
a
Steam
lot
Deck.
of
I have a
people.
video. She did a video on my channel with on it.
All
I
right,
know a lot of people who really love Hogwarts Legacy.
I was not one of them. I thought it was enjoyable, like as a romp around Hogwarts, but the actual gameplay itself just didn't hit for me.
Yeah.
Let's see. Another game they mentioned was Mortal Kombat. I prefer Street Fighter personally. That's just me. And then Game of Thrones. I don't know what Game of Thrones game they're making. I couldn't imagine what sort of Game of Thrones game they're gonna make besides putting more Game of Thrones characters in multiverses.
It's called Game of Thrones: The Game.
Oh shit, we're actually playing the Game of Thrones now. What are we, some kind of Game of Thrones?
The Game of Thrones.
The Game of Thrones.
The Game of Thrones.
I like that.
And DC, quote unquote, in particular, Batman.
Mm.
Yeah.
Wait,
Batman's
Game
always
of
going to
Thrones,
sell well.
the Game of Thrones game, isn't that just like musical chairs?
Yeah, but like it's the world's deadliest game of musical chairs.
Yeah. Sorry.
Oh, it's deadly. That's going to be the bloodiest game out there.
Yeah, you can't sit on that chair for more than like a second, otherwise you'll cut yourself and probably get tetanus or some shit.
The Game of Thrones game, I just don't see it doing well. That's a weird one to double down on.
Maybe it'll be
Especially
like
because everyone's still sour about the last season of that show. Right?
Well,
I'm sour about that last season. It's crazy.
yeah. I spent so much time and then yeah. What a garbage fire that was. It made it hard. I can't even go back and watch the beginning stuff anymore. I'm not usually like that. But the newer one, they have a newer show, right? The House of the Dragon or whatever. That's doing well. So they're probably thinking the universe is still good as long as we deviate maybe from the original. Maybe they'll do a House of the Dragon.
They're
But-
gonna do like an Elden Ring kind of thing. And it's
Now,
gonna be bad.
Hold up. If they did do something Elden Ring-esque, that could be super successful. But with these types of things, they don't get the right studios for it, and it's not. I don't see it being successful.
Well, I mean, they can't rip off Smash Bros, so they can't rip off Elden Ring. That's my take.
That would require George R. Martin to actually write the final books.
He's not gonna.
Yeah, I feel like if they do a Game of Thrones book, it needs to go into the fantasy side of things. So like make it beyond the wall, or make it on like the east side, like where there's still magical stuff, you know? That to me would be very interesting, as opposed to like shuffling around of who's in charge and like whatever Baratheon, you know, like that's it takes a master to write the kind of story to even make that compelling, and it's already been written. And so are we going to get something like that again? Probably not. Let's just make it like a crazy exploration of the rest of the world. That would be cool for me.
I agree. Like, kind of go away from the main story, because sometimes they focus on that stuff, and that's actually bad for these types of games. I will say an RTS or some type of like strategy game would be really fun in that. I'd actually play that.
That would be cool.
Or might even do an Elden Ring one where you're over the wall, and
Right.
later on, like that
That's
could
what
be
made me
really
think about
fun.
it.
Yeah, that would be really fun, and dive into the world, but don't dive into what already like that cluster F of stuff that happened already.
Right.
I like that. Oh wow, they should hire you to come up with the idea for it. Like, I would play. That's the thing. I already like. I don't have faith that they'll do it, but like that's what I'd play that, and I'm against it.
Yeah, I'd play it too. Now, as for Batman, I mean, what was the last time they made a Batman Arkham game? Like, what was that, in 2017?
They just came out with a VR one
Yeah, it was VR.
Okay, we're not talking
just recently, and it was successful. No, it was successful. That's why they're talking about it. For a VR game, it was successful, from my understanding. I haven't looked into it though.
Yeah. I don't know if they're still working on that Wonder Woman game. So you know the Nemesis system from what was it? Shadow of Mordor, I think.
Shadow of Mordor.
Shadow of War. So apparently they were going to implement that into a Wonder Woman game, but we haven't heard anything about that since like forever, since like last generation.
That would actually be kind of fun. But how would they get the full system into that? Because with that, you can kind of bribe people, or like the orcs and all that, and you can get them to be on your side. You can conquer them, control them. There's take them out. There's a lot of different things to that, but I'm curious how they would implement that in like you're a superhero. You're not really going to do any of that, the shadier stuff.
It's probably going to be like based in Themyscira or like ancient times, and not like based in like modern day like Justice League times. Well, if I had to guess,
That's still like for DC pretty shady. DC's even more like they don't like being ambiguous with morals. They're like it's black or white kind of thing. Where Marvel's a little different.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't see that happening. I have a feeling that got canceled.
Mm.
They can make another Superman game.
another. When was the last time we've had a dedicated Superman game that wasn't like Injustice 1 or 2?
Oh, I'm talking about like way back in the day, the really crappy
Superman 64.
Yeah.
Oh my god, no.
I think the only Superman game I've enjoyed was Superman on the arcade back in like the mid 80s. You know, like you'd punch the guy and he'd like be a green outline before he died. Like that was like the coolest game. But yeah, I haven't really played anything since then.
Mm.
Wow. They haven't made a good one since then. Injustice is good though. Injustice was that they should do another Injustice.
I think they will. I think they will. I enjoy the story modes of the Injustice games. I'm not sure I would enjoy like the multiplayer of Injustice these days, because it can get really degenerate at times. And I've participated in some of the degeneracy. It's fun, but Green Lantern.
That's funny. Yeah.
But yes, Multiverses. What a shame.
Oh, well.
So yeah, Harry Potter, like the Hogwarts games, I think will be successful as long as and I think the studio that's doing it is going to be. I think that one will be for sure a hit, because the first one, Hogwarts, is not for everyone per se. They did a really good job. They're actually, I think, based out of Salt Lake here, where I'm at. I'm in Salt Lake, Utah, and they learned from that, and I think they're going to take everything from that and just build upon it. And so as long as they get the combat better, because I agree, I haven't finished it yet either. But and I'm not even the biggest Harry Potter fan, but it was a fun world to explore, and if they can build on that, I think they'll have I think that's a big one for them to focus on. Same with Batman.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna give the second one a chance. And speaking of second chances, I think it's time for me to give Apple a second chance, because the M4 Mac Mini has a removable M.2 SSD, but it's like one of those weird proprietary ones where in order to actually upgrade it, you used to have to like desolder the NAND chips.
Yeah, I just watched DOS Dudes upgrade.
No, that's the same video I watched too.
Yeah, it was really interesting. I thought that was cool. In the video, he had to remove the NAND chips and then reball some surface mount other NAND chips that were a lot bigger, and then they were 1 terabyte, and then he was not able to actually upgrade the NAND to a 2 terabyte thing. He had to cut it back to 512 on each side, so it was a 1 terabyte drive. And which is I don't know if I explained that well, but essentially he had to desolder the SSD and then re-solder the other NAND chips onto it, and it didn't work the first time. So
yeah, so the M.2 SSD looks like it doesn't have the controller on it at all. It looks like the controller might just be part of the SoC, or I guess the main board.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is unusual. So you can't just take an M.2 out and then put your own 2242 NVMe SSD into there, because it's probably going to be rejected, to be honest.
Do you think a third party could make some replaceable SSDs for this?
It's probably possible, but I would also imagine that there's some kind of stupid encryption handshake between the logic board and the package. So
yeah,
it's a very Apple move.
I don't think Apple likes. They want to upgrade. They want to upsell you, and that's the problem with Apple. But I will say, the pluses of what Apple's done with SSDs being soldered to the board and all that has been really nice.
Yeah,
really, they have control, but it is also really annoying for trying to upgrade.
Especially because their upsale prices are so high. I remember seeing that you could buy 2 Mac Mini M4s at the lowest tier for cheaper than just upgrading the storage on one of them.
Yep.
So it's there's an incentive there now for somebody, OWC, Otherworld Computing. They always do a lot of post-sale Mac stuff, there's incentive for them to come up with some sort of storage solution. Mine came in the mail yesterday, so I'm going to make a video on it this coming week, because the M4 chip is just crazy when it comes to emulation, and so I think that'll be a really cool, fun video to make.
That'll be a really cool video.
You know,
Russ, what do you use for video editing, Russ?
So I use a MacBook Pro M3. I use Final Cut Pro.
Final Cut Pro. Okay, cool.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. I use DaVinci, and I think everybody else does too, right?
Yeah, most people do, yeah. But
yeah.
I'm just
DaVinci or Descript.
they had a deal going during the pandemic. They were like a free 90-day trial of Final Cut Pro, and I think I was using iMovie back then, and I was like, oh sure, I'll try it out. And within 30 days, I purchased it, for $300 or whatever, and I've just been very happy with it. I think the 90-day trial is still in effect, which is pretty generous.
It is. I've used it. It is nice software. It's very similar in a lot of ways to DaVinci Resolve.
Even the like node-based editing for the effects and whatnot, like Fusion.
It's stacked instead of nodes, but it's a similar concept. It just looks different. The problem
cool
with Final Cut Pro is it's not good for multiple people working on the same project. And so I dug myself into a hole where now I'm like, I can't get an outside editor easily. And so that's kind of an issue for me. Is I'm very good now at Final Cut Pro, but man, I'm at that level where I kind of want someone else to do it, and it's too much for those project files.
I understand.
I have a home lab set up here with a custom Docker container that does like it offloads the editing stuff. So like in DaVinci, you don't use like files to like write your stuff. You write it to a database. So all that's like networked in my house, and we have two workstations here where my girlfriend and I can work on the same project or amazing. On either station. It's really neat.
Yeah, that's super cool. Yeah,
I should do that.
I would love to have something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I should do that too, man. I have a server, like I have a rack-mounted server in a closet downstairs. I don't have a rack though. It's just on like a filing cabinet. I probably shouldn't
a filing cabinet server.
Yeah, I bring up the video editing thing because I'm very curious how DaVinci is going to perform on M4. I suspect it's going to be great, but I have to use Windows because I use like some of the cameras I use output like video formats that the Linux version of DaVinci doesn't support. So I have to use Windows, but I'd rather not.
Same.
Wait,
so
that doesn't support the codecs? Like there's a codecs? Because
there are two codecs that the Linux version supports, and that's it. And both of them are like from the proprietary camera system that Blackmagic sells.
Wait, even like Studio
You can't use MP4s, you can't use MOVs, you can't use H.264 or 5 in DaVinci on Linux. Like, you can't do it.
Like just the free version or the Studio version?
I have the Studio version.
Oh,
that's
shit.
Weird. The Studio version is supposed to be able to play more of those proprietary ones. I'm surprised.
Yes. Well, the Studio version supports GPU decoding of those other codecs, but only on Windows and Mac. Yeah.
Interesting.
It sucks.
I will say, so one thing to add into the whole, like, whether or not the M4 performs well with video editing, I bought the M3 after having an M1 MacBook Pro, and it was the worst purchase I've ever made in my life because it didn't really change anything. Like basically any of these M chips are great, and yeah, some are better than the others, but they're so far above what I need in terms of just video editing, and I'm doing 4K 30 frames per second. It's still too much. And so I remember dropping that money down. I was like, oh, I hope this really improves my rendering times or whatever. And it was like 5 seconds. It did not change anything. And so that was it's a great laptop. And I love being able to drag it from here in the studio to the house when I'm going and doing editing and stuff, which is why I use it. But yeah, that purchase upgrade was not an upgrade really.
What format do you shoot on? Just curious.
So I'm just using standard like MOV files, like I'm not doing 10-bit and I'm not like that far into it or anything. I'm just standard.
So not ProRes or anything?
No.
Okay.
Not yet. So I that's another layer of editing, color grading and stuff where I'm like, it's good enough for now. So
yeah. I feel that.
I'm this close to buying an M4 Mac Mini. Like I have a cousin who's in college. I might just have to jack his student discount for myself.
Yeah, so it's only $500. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
And if you do the home lab thing,
such
you
a
can
good deal.
offload your footage onto the like a NAS or something, and you don't have to upgrade the storage, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's the way to go, actually. Even with this, with these types of devices, especially when you're doing content creation, you just have a secondary drive that's fast enough. And now that if you get the Thunderbolt 5, I believe it will support. I don't know which version, but I believe M4 Mac Minis will do have a version that supports it. You're gonna get it. You don't need it. Like for most stuff, even games, you probably don't need to upgrade the internals. You just get a secondary drive that you can plug it into.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I have an all SSD NAS somewhere else. It's a different like box. It's not the server, and it's been doing pretty well. Like it has a Celeron side. Like I honestly kind of thought it'd be really slow because Celeron's kind of had that bad reputation of being sort of slow, right? But it's been doing pretty good for like transcoding and like whatnot. Because I also run a Docker server off of it too, my Jellyfin server.
Nice.
So I do have a question, Russ, on that. So with that like upgrade from the M1 to M3, you've only tried it in Final Cut though, right? Not.
Yeah, I have not tried DaVinci or anything as far as
I've seen
video
numbers
editing.
with rendering. It should increase quite a bit, but I'm wondering if it's a software issue. But
Yeah,
you think their
it's possible.
software would work better, but
Right. Yeah.
that's interesting.
Yeah, I just remember, I mean, it was a year or two ago when I bought it, and I was like, what have I done? Because I did the whole trade-in thing. I traded in the old one and got a little bit of money back to get the new one, and I was like, oh my gosh, this was such a dumb move, but it's all good. It's nice and shiny. So
I have an M2 MacBook, and I want an M4 MacBook now because like my main PC, it's like, oh, what is it? It's it's like 3 or 4 year old i9 processor with the 3090. It renders great, but my MacBook still beats it with DaVinci Resolve.
Yeah.
Like it's like no contest, and that's unplugged from the power.
I mean, when it comes down to it, I've just never hit a moment where I'm like, wow, I need a new computer now. Like that's never come across at all whenever I'm using the MacBook Pro, which has been great. So
really, the Intels, I had one of the last gen Intels, and I hated it. It started like something to happen. I think something happened to the CPU. It must have gotten overheated by putting it in the bag while it turned on. We had a discussion like that last time, I think, with the sleep not working on Intel chips as well. Sleeping the PC, and it's night and day difference. My Intel, it's 992. That might be my problem. I might have gone too powerful with it, and it's just 9-day difference. And I was almost done with Mac. Not to drone on about all this stuff, but I was almost done with Mac until I got my hands on an M chip MacBook, and I was like, okay, I'm back.
yeah, it's been great. I've actually owned every Mac Mini since they first came out. I use them as my Plex server, and so I've always kind of had on that upgrade path. And I made a video about the previous Mac Mini about a year ago. And yeah, emulation performance wise in particular, as long as there was an emulator for Mac, there's a couple like the Xbox 360 emulator Xenia is not available, but like most of the others are, and so it's really impressive what you can get at that price point, especially if you try to get a similar Windows, like you're looking at computers at that price point and trying to get something on Windows that will do the same emulation performance. There's just nothing there. The big difference though is that Windows computers can play PC games, whereas Macs not so much. So that's the big rub. It's like, are you only looking for emulation? Then yeah, this could work. So
yeah, no, that they're working on it more and more, and it looks like Atom is it Atom? ARM, sorry. Wow. ARM is going to be supported more and more by Proton, so hopefully, and Mac's doing their thing too. They're using, I think, parts of Proton in some of their software that they have. So there's future hope that Mac will work better, and I'm kind of done with Windows. I don't know about you guys, but I'm kind of just done with it. I don't feel like they give me enough to warrant having them. I only think reason I have Windows now is just to play games, and I'm even like doing that more on Steam Deck, and I love playing games at max, but the experience, like I had to reformat my computer recently again, and it's running better now, but I'm just getting tired of this. Like I install one bad software, and I haven't even installed anything too crazy, and it just not work. And so I'm kind of just done, and I don't like to to commit to all these big companies too much, because then you always get burnt eventually. But I am thinking about getting the M4 Mac Mini for like server-based stuff, which is kind of silly, but it'd be fun. It'd be my tinker toy kind of thing, where I would maybe do some maybe throw it off as a render box or something like that and have fun with it.
Yeah, we have a generational thing in our house. So my wife gets the most updated Mac Mini, and she has that hooked up to a monitor, and then I'll take the previous model, and that's the Plex server. So I'm always like one generation. So there's two in the house, one generation behind kind of thing is my server, and it's still way overkill for what I'm using it for. But
yeah.
And what happens to that what happens to that one when a new version comes out? The Plexer one that
so then
uses.
I usually will sell that one on eBay as like the generations. So the third generation one, as it phases out, goes on eBay for a couple $100. And so
Nice.
Honestly, that's not a bad proposition.
I know why High Tech asked. He wants it.
Man, I'm really tempted to get a Mac Mini. I'm tempted to just like, I don't want to say decommission my main desktop, but like that's kind of what's gonna happen. I'm just gonna take it out of my area and then put it somewhere in a remote server, turn it into like a sort of remote gaming server of my own. Like, think of it as like GeForce NVIDIA Now, but like without the really crappy time limit.
Yeah. That's a
like,
great idea.
yeah, like, okay, GeForce Now I think was like the best service when it comes to like game streaming, and now it's like become one of the worst, just from just having. Yeah, because there's 100-hour a month time limit, and I don't know how often you guys would use it up, but I think I'd like burn that up pretty quickly. And it's not just for like the free tiers. Like, I might understand if it's just for like the free tiers, but it's for every tier.
It's for every tier.
Yeah.
Can you not get any more time than 100 hours?
You can buy more time. It's $2.99 for the first tier, and then it's $5.99 for the second, and that's 15 hours for each.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And 15 hours will roll over if you don't use 15 hours. It'll roll over into the next month, but it's still like, this is just the slow inevitable rug pull.
Right.
I'm not surprised. Well, here's the thing. It's expensive to run this type of stuff. I don't even know if they're actually making any money off of the GeForce Now service. 100 hours rendering like on big beefy machines, also have bandwidth. Like, they probably all have really good deal. Like, there's no way like a third party could do anything like this and have it be that reasonably priced. It doesn't sound reasonable, but that's pretty reasonable.
Yeah, we discussed this. We recorded yesterday for Nerd Nest, and we discussed this. And one of the good points, I can't remember who brought up, I think it was Rich, was like, this will stop people who are just blatantly like using GeForce Now because there's no limitation on it. So they're like, hey, I'm going to go and grab dinner. I'm going to leave my game running. You know what I mean? And then just going to go, like, this is going to at least kind of cut that down. Now, 100 hours, whether or not that's the right choice, I'm not sure. That's about, 3.3 hours a day if you're looking at a 30-day month, And so I don't play enough streaming in a day to do that. But there are people who are doing that, and they might also be abusing it and like, let's go grab a bite to eat kind of thing. And so, yeah, it's interesting. I like that 15-hour banking idea, but one thing I didn't really understand from the article is whether or not that stacks, because I think that would be kind of neat. Stacking 15 every month, and you do that for a year, and all of a sudden all of that anxiety about, oh, am I going to run out this month? It's like, I got 100 hours in the bank, who cares? Like, that might be a good move, but I'm not sure if it's stackable.
I would be surprised if it is, but that would be pretty cool on their part if they did that.
Yeah, I understand where Russ is coming from. Though I will say that I think there's an explicit time limit for free users, because you can only play for like an hour, and then it cuts you off, and like it cuts the game off like automatically. So you can't just like AFK farm or whatever.
My favorite thing about this article, is it says gamers playing on the free tier will now see their streaming from basic rigs with varying specs that offer entry-level cloud gamings that's optimized for capacity, which means you kids are getting like the short end of the stick, you free moochers. I think it's hilarious.
I mean, I'm surprised they even allow a free tier.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, like, this is people don't understand the infrastructure costs for this type of stuff. They can only get away with it because it's NVIDIA.
Well, you said it earlier, man, like data. Think about the data that they get. You go in here and you log into your Steam account, and then they can see all of that. You know, they get all this data about your playtime and all this stuff. It's like, it's very clear that they're doing it for the data.
For the data, but I'm wondering what they're going to use that data on. I mean, the gaming arm of NVIDIA is not even they make all their money now off of everything else, business to business with
like AI
and all that. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if they shuttered the gaming part one day.
I honestly, when Google announced Stadia, I was like, there's no way this is sustainable and nobody's going to do this. But the reason that they're doing it is like as a way for them to write off like bulking up their GPU capacity. And I'm curious if that is something that NVIDIA has been doing with this, like bulking up their GPU compute.
Oh yeah,
like they
probably
have in-house, you know.
Oh, there's so many things if they do it right, there's so many things they can actually benefit from using this. But I'm kind of curious because Google stated the problem with Google is that I'm sure it was costing them a lot. I can't remember what it was. I remember the numbers but it probably would have been more successful if they don't cancel stuff. Google, I don't trust them with anything anymore now. I would hate to have put so much time into Stadia and then just have them do that. I played it on and off for fun, but because I had a neighbor give me a Stadia kit because they gave them out for essentially free. But the only one I've ever like trusted someone is the GeForce Now, to be honest. And I think it was a GeForce Now or another company gave me a bunch of time for free too, like a year or two ago, and I enjoyed it, but I've never bought into any of them.
Yeah, NVIDIA gave me like access to this for 3 months because they had like rolled out the Linux install script, and I tried it and I was like, okay. I literally tried it for a couple hours and I was like, yep, all right. And I didn't touch it again. It's just not the way that I play games.
I think so if you don't want to maintain a PC, like a really beefy PC, I wouldn't be surprised if going this route is similar cost to be. You could probably end up getting better performance and better visuals off of this than if you were just for a cheaper price, that is, than having to maintain a PC at the same level year after year. It gets expensive, and so I'm kind of wondering if it's just easier for people to go this route. Now, that being said, you have to make sure you have a really good internet connection close to one of their nodes. I'm sure also helps a lot, or server farms or whatever. But yeah, like this is one that I've always thought about, but I just can't. I don't know about you guys. I like playing games physically on my device. It works. Like if wherever I'm at, I can turn it on. It works. I don't have to worry about connections or anything like that. But so I've never been big into streaming, but yeah, I don't know.
The thing is, when I first got like an HD TV, I didn't have a Blu-ray player. I didn't have like any of that stuff. I had over-the-air satellite, or no, I had over-the-air TV, and it was before they had like rolled out the HD TV signals. And so I remember watching that and being like, this doesn't look that much better. Like, I don't understand. But then I got an Xbox 360 and I plugged it in and I was like, wow, look at how much detail there is. This looks so amazing. And, you know, it feels like we're moving backwards in terms of video quality, where it's like GeForce Now, I mean, it looks okay, but you can definitely, especially when there's a lot of motion on the screen, you're going to get artifacting.
Yeah.
And even like with like the upscaling DLSS and stuff, it's like you definitely lose quality when you have those types of upscalers enabled. And it's like, I want crisp, beautiful pictures. And it's why it doesn't bother me that the Steam Deck has an 800p screen. Because like a lot of games I can render at 800p and not have to enable upscaling or anything. And it looks great at that scale, on that screen in my hands. I don't know. I want things to look crisp. And when you have that uncompressed like signal that's coming right from the box that, it's being generated on, you can't beat it.
Yeah.
I mean, some games you can. Like, some games do not play very well at all on Steam Deck. So
Oh yeah,
it will play better if
yeah.
you stream it. So some games I could definitely see myself doing it. I just haven't needed to yet. But I don't know. I've been wanting to play Baldur's Gate 3 on my Steam Deck with better performance than I get, because right now it looks drastically worse than like my PlayStation 1 game. And so I'm getting to the point where maybe I would buy something like this so I can play Baldur's Gate 3 on my Steam Deck, because games that are like really long, I don't like playing on the PC. I want to be comfortable.
Yeah.
And having kids, I can pick that up in between doing all that stuff.
Do you have a gaming PC in your house? Because you could stream from that too.
Yeah.
I'm in the middle of setting it up. I've never got it to work overly well, but I'm installing a new mesh network that is the 6E standard, and so it's awesome so far speed wise, but I need to finish setting up my mesh network. So yeah, I'm in. Well, that's the thing. I reformatted that computer. I use my Windows machine only for doing game development, which I would love to be able to do that more on Mac, which it's so close, and then gaming, and that's all it's going to be for. And so I'm transitioning it over to like kind of what High Tech is maybe doing. It's more of a box that I can consume instead of actually logging into. I don't like logging into it. I hate touching it anymore because it's so finicky.
Well
and
said.
they place weird AI stuff everywhere. And I'm not usually, I don't usually get triggered by that stuff too much. It's just getting annoying now, where I'm like, wait, what is this thing that's right here now? That's Copilot thing. Like, I use Copilot to code because I'm a software engineer, and I like Copilot, but I don't like it being just injected into my operating system in like weird ways. But yeah,
and I mean, I think it's a great proposition. I mean, because you could buy a lot of used parts. You don't have to use like the highest end parts for these sorts of like cloud computers. Like, I understand a lot of people like the allure of like having a 4090 like at your fingertips at all times from your Steam Deck, but like, really, you don't need that. You can just buy like a used graphics card and just set it up that way. Like, you just install Windows on it, and then you could have like a one of those like headless mount. What are they called? You know what I'm talking about? Where you plug it into like an HDMI port on your graphics card, and the computer thinks it has a display when really it doesn't. Yeah. Like, you can get those, and then the dummy plugs, and then you could also plug it into Ethernet, because I know a lot of people have an issue where they'll put their computer next to the router, but they won't plug it into the Ethernet port for whatever reason, and like that's also a major issue too.
Yeah,
it's not the same. It's not the same thing as putting it next to the router, I will say.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of in-home streaming as opposed to cloud streaming, because I live in Hawaii and we've got no servers here. So Stadia was never supported here officially. GeForce Now is pretty buggy. Even the Xbox One, the Game Pass Ultimate, it's hit or miss, depending on the time of day and whether or not it's raining. Like, if it's raining here in Hawaii, then all the servers just like terrible. And so,
but they don't have servers there, right?
There's no servers, so it's just all dealing with the connection here.
If it's raining, how's that signal getting? That is okay.
It's in Hawaii. When it's raining, internet is worse. It's been that way for 30 years.
Don't they have fiber lines to there? I thought they did.
They do, and so a lot of it is, but it's so I'm not sure what's happening on island to make that, but it's just a known. It's like, oh, why is the internet so bad? Oh, it's raining. Come on,
that's crazy. I mean, that's the craziest thing I've heard, to be honest. It's kind of like how
the craziest thing you'll hear about Hawaii is shipping stuff over there is also really hard. Batteries or other things get expensive.
Yeah, I've heard. My parents were in Hawaii like a couple years back for a vacation, and they told me how like a box of cereal was like $20, and this was like before like prices nowadays.
It's not $20.
That's not that bad. But
that's what they said.
Well,
the shipping of things is a pain. There are many things that won't ship here, even Amazon. There's no Amazon warehouse here or whatever either. So it's like everything takes at least 3 days when you order from Amazon. But then we periodically, we go to the mainland, visit or whatever, have friends go. And so we'll have things shipped to that house, on the mainland, like my parents or whatever, and then pick it up. Like if it's a battery, like, because those things you can't ship over Amazon and stuff. It's just crazy.
Do you find getting stuff from shipped to you from let's just say companies that you're working with to make content for and all that, do you find it's harder for them to ship to you? Or
yeah, I've had a
it's
few
okay?
rejected. So like the Lenovo Legion Go, they tried to send that to me and they didn't put the proper battery sticker on the box, and it got rejected and sent back. And so I had to walk to Best Buy the day it came out and just buy it myself because I'm still waiting for the review unit, you know. But most part, it's one of those where as long as they don't declare what it is specifically, that it has something that contains a battery, then often it'll just get through even if they don't put the battery sticker on it. So sometimes it's more like ignorance is bliss, where these companies will send me stuff and they definitely have a battery and it's a handheld console or whatever, but they just don't declare it as that. They just say game player or whatever. And so it usually will squeeze through even though it probably shouldn't.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
I know a few people that live in Hawaii, and I've had to send a PC to one of them, and that was expensive. That was very expensive. And it was a very small PC.
Yeah, I have, I do a lot of mini PC reviews on my channel, probably one every 2 weeks or so. So I've got a stack, I don't know, 20 or 30 of them here. And I have a charity auction. When I'm done with a review unit and it's like run its course, then I will auction off to charity on eBay. But I stopped doing the mini PCs because they're so expensive to ship, and I don't want to charge someone $100 to ship a $200 mini PC. And so I just got a stack of them at this point. My goal is I'm going to wipe them all and then like donate them to like a school or something like that. But
that's a good way to do it too.
That is a good way too. Yeah. Like honestly, man, I couldn't imagine just like getting stuff in Hawaii. How does Mikkel do it? Remember, you guys know Mikkel Casanova?
Mikkel has a lot of connections, so that's how he does it, and he still even struggles. So he's like he's Sony partnered. He has all that stuff. He gets all the big stuff, but like I think even for him, he has issues with batteries. Sometimes there's the battery issue, right, Russ? And so, it's
I haven't talked to him in a while.
Shipping is just So I often. There's certain companies where they they try to get me a review unit at the same time as everybody else, but shipping here has to go from China, has to go to California first and then over here. And so I'm always a day behind. And there's a couple companies that are like, we ship one day and then we hold everybody else for so that way like everyone gets theirs at the same time. So I have like a 1 day head start, except for the fact that I live in Hawaii and I don't, And so it's weird how this whole shipping thing works here in terms of reviews.
I mean, it's great that you still get a lot of like the stuff. It's unfortunate that your Legion Go never came, or I guess did it come eventually?
No, I never came. So I just told them don't worry about it, and I just bought it. Same with the MSI Claw. I think I ended up just buying my own because they couldn't get it in time.
That's weird. They have international shipping. Like their logistics is really good. Typically, they ship those devices, but they must ship them in bulk. They don't do it individually, and that's
right.
Huh?
Yeah,
weird.
Hawaii is just weird. Yeah,
it is weird.
Well, it is what it is, right? Speaking of which, though, I think Hawaii. I want to go Hawaii one day. You got to tell me all the places to go, man. I need like a list. It.
Anyone needs any tips for like restaurants or the best place to get like shave ice? It's like our snow cones here or whatever. You got to find the hole in walls. You can't just go to Matsumoto's, which is the one that was on the Adam Sandler movie or whatever. Like you gotta find the good ones. And so my wife's from here, and so born and raised, and I met her my very first tour here, 20 plus years ago, and so she's my insider for all this kind of stuff. Because even though I have lived here for I don't know almost 15 or 16 years at this point, off and on, it's still there's still a lot of things that I don't know. So.
Oh. That's good. I'll hit you up if I ever end up in Hawaii, dude.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, I've been to Alaska this past summer, and one of the craziest things that you'll learn about Alaska is that during the summer, the sun never sets in Alaska.
Right.
And it tripped me out for the first time because I didn't know this, and I was trying to sleep, and like it was pretty dark, all things considered. But
you have to have blackout.
It was not black.
You have to have blackout curtains.
It's like
St. Petersburg's similar.
Like, it was like on oh my god, it was like I was like an alien planet almost.
Yeah, I grew up in the Seattle area, and nothing like how it is in Alaska, but like even just being that far north in the hemisphere, like the summer days are long and the winter days are long too, or the winter nights, I should say, are long too. And so you feel that difference. Nothing like that happens here. We don't even have a daylight savings time. So, yeah, it's totally.
That's
different.
right. Yeah. It's fairly, because you're close to the equator, it's fairly consistent.
Right. Yeah, a lot of people don't realize how far south Hawaii is. It's more, it's parallel with like Mexico, not the rest of the United States. So it's
it's a very
the equator.
Tropical. Yeah, it's a beautiful place, or so I've heard.
Yeah,
it's beautiful. Great. It's beautiful, and there's a lot like poke is like what you want to get when you go over there. That stuff's tasty if you're into that type of thing. I love it. Yeah. I like it a little bit more than sushi, actually.
Yeah, so here's the tip with that. Like there are poke shops that have like come up here and stuff, but that's not generally where the locals will go. We just go to a place called Foodland. Like it's called Foodland Farms now, depending where it's just a grocery store. You go to the grocery store, and instead of having like your seafood counter and your meat counter or whatever, there's just a poke counter. And it's just like all these different types, and you say, I want 1 pint of that or whatever, and that's the best tasting and the most affordable poke on the island is at the grocery store, not at an actual shop. So
I went to a hole-in-the-wall place that looked pretty legit, and they had, it was really good. It was really good.
That's awesome.
Yeah, finding places where the locals go versus like tourist traps is always really difficult.
Yeah, that's a big thing here is like getting the Kama'aina or like the local places or the rates for that kind of stuff, because it can be really expensive. We go to Waikiki once every 2 years, you know what I mean, just to kind of walk around and be like, oh, this is what people are paying, that's just not the typical local life.
Yeah, you got to show us around sometime, man. Maybe we'll host a special episode of Off the Console on the beach.
From the beach, yeah, that'd be great.
From the beach. That's good stuff. Oh man, there was one other topic I wasn't able to put onto the thing that happened recently. I don't know why I'm bringing it up now if I can't remember it, but
well, I might be able to remember it if you can remember like the gist of it.
No, I forgot. We were talking about Hawaii and I forgot it.
Was it Ubisoft?
Was it Ubisoft?
We talk about Ubisoft every week, so
I know. I think we're going to be hopefully we're running the gamut on that one, because I'm starting to. Ubisoft is dead to me now already. Let's see. I wish I remember what it was, because there is new. There was a lot of good news that happened over the past week or two. Oh well.
Well, that's fine too.
Yeah. No, we can always talk about it next time.
Yeah. And, well, all I can say is thanks for joining us, Russ, and I really appreciate you accepting my invite to join the podcast. And
my pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
And there will be links in the descriptions to all of our podcasts. I mean, all of our channels, all of, and Russ too. And, you gotta take us around Hawaii, dude.
Yeah, let's do it.
Do a virtual tour. Gotta do a virtual tour. Everyone wants a virtual tour.
You gotta be Hawaii's ambassador.
Yeah, totally.
All right.
Cool.
All right. Have a good day, y'all.
Thanks, Russ.
Thanks for joining.
Thanks.
Bye, guys.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you.
It's been awesome.